If you've ever looked back on the early days of your business or your relationship and thought, we may not have had much, but we made much of what we did have, hey, this episode is for you. Today on Fully Alive Podcast, we're talking about getting your Scrappy back. If you're joining us for the first time, I want to welcome you. My name is Jeff Capusta, and welcome to the Fully Alive Podcast. I'm so glad that you're here. I want to encourage you to follow and subscribe so that you can have access to future content. Today, we're talking about getting back to Scrappy. I like to say, I'm bringing Scrappy back. Them other boys, they don't know how to act. That's my best Justin Timberlake right there, okay? I made it my own. We're talking about getting back to the things that we used to do in the old days when we were scrappy. Not long ago, I was at a conference over in Europe. It was in Dublin, Ireland. First time I'd ever been there. Beautiful city. And it was a church conference for leaders. And we're in this old church, this tiny venue. And it was loud. Cables were running everywhere. Speakers were hung from the ceiling. Bunch of young couples. Like, it was passionate. People were fired up. They were giving it everything they had. And at one point, I leaned over to my wife and I said, this is punk rock. Like, I love this. This is raw. It's messy. And it reminds me of the early days when we started our church. Now, don't get me wrong, okay? I love where we are. For those of you that are unfamiliar with myself and the church that I lead a church called LifePoint. It's in coastal North Carolina. We've got 4 locations and 3 of them are in permanent facilities. 1 of them is portable. Listen, I love where we are. I don't want to go back to living in the past. Like, you guys know what I'm talking about. Like, I don't want to go back to living in the first house that we ever owned. But every now and again, can we agree it's good to drive by and just remember those good old days? Like, sometimes, if I'm being honest, I miss the scrappiness of those early days. A while back, I had the chance to pour into some of our leaders at our church. And I told them, I said, I wish I could take you back to the early days of our church. I wish I could rewind, throw you in a DeLorean, hit 88 miles an hour. Let's go back to the very first location that we met in. And I wish I could just show you the day that our equipment showed up. We'd been building a team for months. And the week before our launch Sunday, we had this trailer delivered with all of our church equipment. And I remember when we opened the door to the trailer, it was like Christmas. We pulled all this stuff out. It all smelled brand new. And we were setting up the gear. We were testing everything. We were setting up what felt like just miles of pipe and drape, creating our auditorium. We were dreaming about, that anything was possible. And I remember this particular facility, it was a middle school bathroom. I'm sorry, it was a middle school bathroom. The facility was a middle school, and that'd be weird if church was in a middle school bathroom. But the middle school bathrooms were a major challenge for us. Like, I think that it is scientifically proven that the nastiest place on planet Earth is a boys' bathroom in a middle school. And so we had to figure out, how are we going to use this as a church? How are we going to turn this into something that's attractive? And our team went in there and they put in Bath and Body Works soap, and we put up curtain rods and curtains so that there was privacy in the stalls. And we put these rocks in the sinks because we wanted to create an excellent environment. I think back to our kids' classrooms in those early days. They weren't really classrooms. They were just long hallways that we used pipe and drape to make classrooms. And then there was our kids' ministry that happened in the cafeteria, and our backdrop was this beautiful painting of fruit on the wall. And honestly, it looked like Fruit of the Loom. It was the sponsor of our kids' ministry. And then our very first time that we did baptisms at our church, we had borrowed this baptistry, this portable tank from another church. And the day before service, we tried to get it in the building, and we discovered it was bigger than any of the doorways in the whole school facility. We couldn't get it in there. We had to go to Walmart and buy this inflatable pool that we then proceeded to fill with water from the hot water heater there at the school. It was gross. It was yellow. There were floaters all in it. And we learned something. We learned that when you fill one of these inflatable pools with hot water, the hot water starts melting the seams. The water's beginning to leak out all over the floor. We've got cables and electricity running everywhere. Bottom line, it was a mess. But I loved every minute of it because our team had a scrappiness that said, we'll do whatever it takes. We know that we're creating a place where people are going to meet Jesus. We're going to do whatever it takes. Those were scrappy days. And honestly, every now and again, I just wish I could load people up and take them back, and we could do a little walk down memory lane. Now, listen, memory lane is a great place to visit. It's a terrible place to live. But every now and again, there's something about going back and just remembering. So what does it mean to be scrappy? I love to preach. I love acronyms. So let me give you one. Let's go through the word scrappy and let's talk about what it means to get back to scrappy in our life, maybe in our relationships or perhaps in our business. So the S in scrappy means simple. Simple. We know that Jesus simplifies things. When asked what's the greatest commandment, he says, love your Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, love your neighbor as yourself. We talk about that quite a bit here of Fully Life because quite honestly, part of living fully alive is honoring God and living and loving people. So Jesus simplifies this. He says, guys, at the end of the day, if we can nail these two things, we'll end up obeying all the laws, all the prophets. And if we want to be scrappy, we've got to keep things simple. Do you remember when life was so much more simple? Life has a way of drifting into complexity. It can become very Byzantine sometimes. You're like, what in the world did he just say? That was my word for the day. I saw it on a board here at the studio that I'm recording. What does it mean? It means complex. And a lot of times in life, we can just make things complex. Can you think back on a moment or a day when life just felt so much more simple? You didn't have quite as many commitments. Your to-do list wasn't quite as long. I think we got to fight to stay simple if we want to be scrappy. Let me ask you, are there areas of your life where you're overcomplicating what should be simple? So if we're going to be scrappy, it starts with, we got to be simple. We got to say, I can do a few things. I'm going to do them really well. The C in scrappy stands for creative. Creative. The Bible says in Isaiah 43, God says, see, I'm doing a new thing. Scrappy people don't let what they have limit what they do. I remember in the early days for us as a church, we were constantly coming up with creative ways to do what God's called us to do. I think about Michelle and I. I told you that we've been married for 27 years now. We dated for 3 years. And can I tell you, in the early days of dating, our dates were so creative, so very creative. We went to unusual places. It might be the park. There was a time we would drive to this little tiny airport in Lynchburg, Virginia, and we would get out of the car and we would put on 90s country music and we would dance beside the car. And I think about date nights now. It's like I look at her and I go, what do you want to eat? And she's like, I don't know. What do you want to eat? And which is why we've started working on a strategy to creatively get back to being, intentional with our dates, to be scrappy with it. I think about, organizationally in the early days, we roll up our sleeves and we get our hands dirty. We built, sets for our stages and we made our own signs and we turned classrooms into nurseries because we had to. Creativity was essential to survival. Sometimes I think that with the more and more resources that we have, we lose that creative edge. So are you solving problems with creative eyes or are you just doing what's comfortable? If you want to stay scrappy, you got to keep things simple. You got to get creative. And the R in scrappy is resilient. Resilient. You got to be able to take a hit and get back up. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 8 says, we are hard pressed on every side, but we're not crushed. Listen, if you're doing anything worthwhile, you're going to face opposition. You're going to get knocked down. So get back up and stay scrappy. Scrappy teams take a hit and they get back up. It was probably within the first 2 years of our church. I remember we showed up one Sunday and we had this banner, this vinyl banner out by the road. And our team was livid because somebody took a razor blade and they slashed all through our banner. Now, that banner probably cost us a few $100s, but back then, a few $100s was a big deal. And I remember being so frustrated. Who would do this? Who would vandalize the banner of a church? And one of our leaders said, look at how close they were to coming to church. Their perspective was so different. I was just angry and they were like, hey, at least they were on the property. We can get another banner. We can get back up. And guess what? Within a week, we had a new banner. We had it out there and we got back up. And what I've learned is over 20 years as a church, listen, you're going to have to learn to get back up. 27 years of marriage, you're going to have to learn, how do we get back up? Life is going to hit you. Get back up. Maybe there's pressure that you're dealing with right now. Let me ask, are you going to push through or are you going to pull back? Because in the scrappy days, we get resilient and we get back up. Let's go to the A in scrappy. If you want to be scrappy, you got to be agile. You got to have some flexibility to you. 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 2 says, be ready in season and out of season. Scrappy stays flexible. You got to hold your plans open-handed. I've learned this. The older I've got, the less flexible I've become. Now I'm speaking physically here, okay? Like I have to be intentional. I have to stretch out more and more. The other day we had this challenge as a staff, and we were broken into teams, and they were like, all right, pick one person on your team. You're going to do max push-ups in 60 seconds. And my team was like, all right, Pastor Jeff, that's you. And I was like, I need about 10 minutes to warm up before I do this because I'm not as flexible as I used to be. Now, humble brag, I didn't warm up. I did a bunch of push-ups and I won. So there's that. But let me just tell you, you got to stay agile. You can't be rigid. Remember coming in one day to do church on a Sunday morning, and we already knew that we weren't allowed to use the lobby at this particular facility. They were refinishing the floors at this middle school. They said, but you can use the back entrance. And we were like, wonderful. The back entrance is right by the dumpsters. They always smell bad, but we're like, you know what? We can roll with it. We're agile. We'll just route everybody in through the back door. Then we show up that morning and we quickly realize, man, it is hot up in here. The AC is broken. It is August in coastal North Carolina. I mean, it's 90 plus degrees, 100% humidity. And as we go into the kids area, the cafeteria, there's a couple inches of water on the floor. So the AC units had gotten locked up and they overflowed and the water had fallen. And we just were like, what do we do? And the first thought was, I guess we just tell everybody, like, go home. Like, church isn't happening. Our team was like, no way. We got this. We went and we took over the weight room and we pulled all this equipment out and we're like, this is going to be the nursery. And then we took the back of the room and we're like, this is where kids are going to be. And we rolled with the punches. We were flexible. And what I've come to learn is the longer we've been at it, the less flexible we become. We create systems and structures. And here's the deal. You need those. Those are good. But if we hold too tightly to our plans, we're going to miss the opportunities and miss the move of God. Like, are you clinging to your plan or are you moving when God moves? Are you being agile? Because in those early days, we did whatever it took. We flexed, we moved, we were agile. You want to be scrappy? Listen, you got to keep it simple. You need to be creative. You got to be resilient. You got to be agile. And here's the P, the first one, is you got to be persistent. You keep showing up. I love this verse in the Bible, Galatians chapter 6, verse 9. It says, let us not grow weary in doing good, for in due season, we will reap a harvest if we don't give up. Now, why in the world would that be in the Bible if doing good doesn't get exhausting sometimes? Sometimes doing the right thing can just wear you out. But let me tell you, if you want to be scrappy, you show up again and again and again and again. And if you run a business, you know that in the beginning, hey, it was exciting. I'm going to start this business. So exciting. And then about 6 months in, you know what? You're still opening the door. You're still greeting people. You got to keep showing up. Here at our church, we're coming up on 20 years. We've crossed over 1,000 weekends as a church. It's a long time to do anything. 20 years, it's a long time. How do you get there? You keep showing up. You keep showing up. Listen, in the beginning, we had to show up. 20 years later, guess what? We still have to show up. If it's not easy, you still show up. When it's not flashy, you still show up. When you don't feel like it, you still show up. There's been a lot of times over the years, I wasn't feeling good. I had a bit of a cold, but guess what? You show up, you play hurt, you be persistent, because in due season, you will reap a harvest if you don't give up. So don't give up. Don't throw in the towel. Keep clocking in. Be persistent. Here's the second P, is you got to be people focused. Scrappy teams, scrappy people, they're not focused on themselves. They're focused on others. God set the tone with this. John 3:16, God so loved the world that he gave. He so loved you that he sent his one only son. Scrappy people love people. They love people more than their processes. They just love people. They remember names. They make personal phone calls. They put a face behind the product. They serve alongside people. People matter. People matter. You put the focus on other people. So ask yourself, the systems that I've created, maybe in my business, are they serving people? Or do I have people serving these systems? Are we still people focused? Am I still externally focused? And then here's the last, the why. The why is that scrappy teams and scrappy people are yielded. They're yielded. Just before Jesus went to the cross, he prayed a prayer and it said this. He said this, Lord, not my will, but yours be done. At the end of the day, he was yielded to the purpose and plans of his Father. Scrappy people are yielded people. They're surrendered to the purpose and the call that God has on them. In the early days of our church, we said yes to God way before we had it all figured out. And if you think that 20 years in, we've got it all figured out, we don't. but we're staying yielded to the God that's called us. That's called faith. So often we want to walk by sight. We're like, God, if you'll show me, then I'll take a step. But that's not faith. God says, how about you live yielded to me? It was those early days where we didn't know how all this was going to happen, but we knew who had called us to it. We stepped out in faith. And for the last 20 years, that's what we've been doing. And now here we are. We've got more skill. We've got more polish. We've got more resources. Here's the danger is that we'll lose our surrender. So I want to ask, have you lost your yieldedness to the Lord? Because if you have, you've lost your scrappiness. So let's land the plane with this. I've talked a lot about what it means to be scrappy. It's being simple. It's being creative and resilient and agile and persistent and people focused and yielded. Maybe that's in your organization. Maybe that's in your home, but let's just get real for just a moment. Let me talk to those of you that you're in school right now. You're a student. You're like, great. Okay. I don't have an organization. I haven't launched a business. Maybe someday. You're a student. Can I just give you just one of these that maybe this can be your focus for this semester? Be yielded. Be yielded. I know you're going to school and you got your major picked out and you think you got the plan ahead of you. Hey, so did I. And God had a different plan. Would you be yielded and would you trust God with the path that he's taking you on? Be okay with the detours, because what I've learned is oftentimes the detours are the lesson. God develops you in the detours. Maybe you're going to change majors. Maybe he's going to reroute you. Stay yielded, live open-handed. God will get you where he wants you to be in due season. So stay faithful and stay yielded. Maybe in your marriage. I have the privilege of coming from a home where my parents they've been married for a really long time, celebrate over 50 years of marriage. Just so grateful for my parents and what they've modeled. And here's what I can tell you. If you for my married couples, maybe here's one that you can take out of Scrappy. Be persistent. Keep showing up for each other, even when you don't feel it. Faithfulness builds the foundation. I could take you to times over my parents' marriage where everything fell apart. There was unfaithfulness. There was infidelity. And they worked through it. And they repented. And God restored, and they've been persistent, and they've been persistent. I can tell you from my wife and I, it hasn't always been sunshine and rainbows. We've faced challenges, but we've been persistent, and we've showed up for each other. We've showed up for the marriage. We've showed up for our kids. And can I tell you, when you show up, God shows up. Be persistent. And then maybe for my business leaders out there, my business owners, my entrepreneurs, can I remind you, stay people focused. It's not all about the bottom line. It's not all about the profits. At the end of the day, business is about people. It's about your team. It's about your customers, your community. When you started that business, listen, you didn't have much. So you focused on what you did have. It might have been one or two employees. It might have been that small storefront. Just recently, I had the privilege to stop at a friend who just moved into a new functional medicine space. And she wanted my wife and I to come and be able to pray over that building. Why? Because several years back when she opened the very first one, she said, would you guys come and pray? And we prayed that God's hand of favor would be on that place. And I remember the first office. It was tiny, but she made the most of it. And she put the focus on people, and that business exploded. And now the space is beautiful, but let me tell you, the focus is still on people. Stay people focused. Listen, I've on my phone, I've always got a notes app, and I get ideas and I punch things in. I wrote this in my notes app, and it's been a little bit of a mantra for me. Maybe you can take it, you can steal it, you can make it your own. And here's what I wrote: less polish, more power. Less precision, more passion. What do I mean by that? I mean, in the early days, listen, we didn't have the people, the dollars, the locations, but man, we were scrappy. We were like, just give us an opportunity and we can do great things. I can tell you this, we didn't get where we are because we're slick. We got here because we're scrappy. We worked hard. We honored the Lord, and his hand of favor was on us. Yes, we should do things with excellence. I think excellence honors God. It inspires people, but don't let polish rob you of power. Stay scrappy. Listen, scrappy, it's not about being sloppy, okay? It's about being passionate. It's about being flexible. It's about being resilient and surrendered. And whether it's your marriage, your studies, your career, get back to scrappy. I'd love to hear from you. What's one area maybe in your life where you're like, man, I got to get back? It could be in your relationship. Like, let's get back to some of those things, those dates. I used to write my wife, poems. I bought her flowers one day. I picked them out myself. I got her a dozen roses, except I miscounted and there was 11. And so we laugh about the here for Valentine's. I gave her 11 roses. Hey, that's a scrappy way to do it. Surprise her with less flowers. But we made the most of what we have. I want you to do the same thing. So maybe drop a comment in the show notes or in the comment there on YouTube. I'd love to hear, what is your takeaway? And I just want to say thank you again, especially those of you that joined us for the first time. If this encouraged you, would you do this? Would you share this with a friend? Maybe you can swipe up or hit the little arrow and tag a friend, text them, let them know this was encouraging, and maybe it'll encourage them as well. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so you don't miss any future episodes. Guys, let's keep it scrappy. Let's stay scrappy together. God bless you.